Hello, Garland Nixon here, and lots going on. We're hanging out with Scott Ritter. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here. We're hanging out with Scott Ritter. My gosh, there's all kind of madness going on now. I mean, and why do I laugh? Because the old saying, you got to laugh to keep from crying. And you look at this. One of the things that and I know you're a guy like me. People are all different types of ideologies, but I quit the ACLU for a number of reasons. But I used to be with the ACLU, and I was with the ACLU because I believed in the Constitution. And I really focused on the first 10 Amendment, the Bill of Rights of the Constitution. And as an example, Scott, let me give you an example of how much I believed in the Constitution in the process. The KKK probably wouldn't like me that much, applied for a permit to march. We took the case. Annapolis said no. And we said, time out. Constitution says we may be fine they have abhorrent views, but we have to protect this right because other people will come along. People have a right to they can have a counter protest, and the police can come there and make sure there's no violence. You can do whatever you want. You can exercise your rights. The Constitution. And I went on TV all over Baltimore and Washington, and I had friends say, Garland, you're a madman. And I said, it has nothing to do with the KKK. This is about the principle of law, right? If you believe in the Constitution, it has nothing to do with who, right? I said, well, Trump did this. I said, I don't believe that what's happening to Trump, as far as a lot of these charges, I don't believe that's legally sound. I don't like it. Doesn't matter whether I like Trump or not. You have to have a belief in rule of law. Why do I say all of this? I see Democrats saying, well, Trump did this or that, or bullcrap statements. But what they won't do is say, okay, Donald Trump violated the rule of law. Constitutionally now, the Congress has a duty to hold him accountable. You don't have a constitution. The courts and there's three areas, right? And all three of them have to act. I don't care what the Constitution says, and I don't care if you're a member of Congress and you accuse him of violating the Constitution. You have a duty and a right to act, not to write a strongly worded statement. And so, in my opinion, these members of Congress, even the ones that condemn him, if they refuse to file articles of impeachment, to take action, they're just as guilty as he is because they're not upholding their duty, whether it's ideological reasons, whether it's APAC, I don't care, Scott.
No, you're 100% correct. I just remind the American audience and the international audience that the United States is a constitutional republic. I was reminded last night on Ask the Inspector, they played a scene from the movie Bridge of Spies. Tom Hanks is the lawyer who's representing a Soviet agent that's being exchanged for an American spy. I mean, I guess it was Powers, the pilot. But he's having a conversation with the CIA agent, and he said, the CIA agent was like, don't go noble on me. We have no rule book here. And Tom Hanks was like, what's your background? German? My background's Irish. We're not the same, but we're both Americans. And the only thing that we have in common is the rule book, the Constitution that defines us. And I try to say this to as many Americans as possible, because there's a whole bunch of people out there, MAGA types, America First types. This is what I voted for. I don't give a flying, what you voted for. Because if what you voted for is inconsistent with the rule of law, then you're on the wrong side of history. You can't vote for, the federal government abusing its powers, whether it's domestically or overseas. The majority, 99% of the American people could vote for something, but if it's unconstitutional, it's unconstitutional. And if we go forward with it, while it might be crowd pleasing, it means we no longer function as a constitutional republic. and it's the end of the United States of America. It's as simple and basic as that. Um, People need to learn the Constitution. And I just don't mean to be insulting, but I'm going to be insulting to the vast majority of Americans out there. If you had to take a qualifying test on the Constitution to retain your American citizenship, you would lose your citizenship because you don't know a damn thing about the Constitution, which means you're not a very good American, to be honest. All these flag-waving MAGA types will fail the constitutional test, so they suck as Americans. And what they should do, except it's not constitutional, they should lose their citizenship. But they were born here, and therefore they are American citizens. Oh, wait, Donald Trump's trying to reinvent that as well. We have a president right now to whom the rule of law simply doesn't matter. I mean, Stephen Miller has come out and said, no, this isn't about anything other than strength and might. Might makes right. We will do what we can do. They published a national security strategy document in November that basically cedes the entire Western Hemisphere to the United States to include all of the resources. People might be surprised to find out now that the United States views Venezuela's oil as our own. But we also view the lithium that's in Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia as our own. We view Canada's oil as our own, Greenland's resources as our own. The Trump corollary is that everything in the Western Hemisphere belongs to us. No, non-hemispheric power can have any say over the resources of this region and how they're done. Everything must go through Uncle Sam. Guys, you can do all the chest thumping you want. You can wrap yourself in the flag all you want. The Constitution says that when the United States president signs a treaty, and it's been ratified by the 2/3 of the United States Senate, it becomes the supreme law of the land. John Marshall and Justice Simpson, I believe his name is, both have, very important Supreme Court precedents where they say exactly that. The supreme law of the land. Treaties hold this weight unless modified by Congress. There has to be legislative acts. And then when that happens, then the courts get to come in because, as you mentioned, we have 3 separate but equal branches of government. No individual branch or a branch operating in unison with another gets to dictate. All 3 must be in alignment: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. So we are signatories to the United Nations Charter. Hell, we wrote the damn thing. And the Senate ratified it. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the supreme law of the land. Congress has taken no legislative actions to modify the charter or somehow change our commitments under the charter. Therefore, Article 4, Section 2 of the charter forbids nations to wage acts of war against others unless it's in self-defense, and self-defense is clearly spelled out, or there's been permission given by resolution under Chapter 7 of the Charter by the Security Council. So when President Trump sends, I guess, 500 American soldiers into Caracas to abduct the leader of Venezuela, that's an act of war, and it's unlawful under international law. And therefore, because the law that's being cited is the United Nations Charter, and it is the supreme law of the United States, it's unlawful under the United States. Plus, there's the additional thing of the president doesn't get to declare war. Congress does. Only Congress does. The president can't say, I'm not going to talk to Congress. They might leak it. I don't see the caveat in the Constitution that says if you believe Congress will leak this, you can't. You have the authority not to go back. Everything that we're doing in Venezuela, everything we are doing in Venezuela is unlawful constitutionally and under international law, which, because that international law is the charter, makes it unconstitutional to begin with. If you're cheering this war on, you're as un-American as it gets. Scott, you're not patriotic. I'm patriotic. I'm more patriotic than you because I care about what we are, who we are, the Constitution. You cannot cheer on what's happening in Venezuela and call yourself an American. End of story. No debate. None. There is no debate. I mean, to be frank, Maduro, the courts lack jurisdiction. If there's any hope of America, and I wrote an article called The Battle of New York, and I say that basically because we have a president who's acting as a dictator, total disregard for the Constitution, because we have a Congress that's allowing him to do this, the only recourse we have left are the courts. And so now we have a 92-year-old judge who is sitting in judgment of Maduro. This judge is the same guy who signed off on the 2020 indictment, by the way. So already, the court system's a little bit compromised. But he's not allowed to hear this case. He has no jurisdiction whatsoever under the Constitution. And the only way our country survives is if the judge recognizes this and dismisses the case with prejudice and releases Maduro. Because we have zero jurisdiction over Nicolas Maduro, none whatsoever. And give you an example. There's a Supreme Court case. I guess it was New Jersey cops were, let me get this, or maybe it's Pennsylvania cops in hot pursuit of somebody who crosses into New Jersey state line. The Pennsylvania cops follow him and then detain him and search the car and find, I guess, drugs or something like that, and arrest him. The case is thrown out. I mean, the guy had the drugs. There's no doubt about it. But Pennsylvania cops have no jurisdiction over this guy. They made an illegal stop, an illegal arrest, and an illegal search. And so everything they did got tossed out on procedures. It doesn't matter if the United States believes they have a case about Nicolas Maduro. We have no jurisdiction. But the other thing is, we found out there's no case. I mean, this is the amazing thing. You had Pete Hegseth justifying murder, the destruction of ships, by talking about the Cartel de las Soles, the cartel of the sun.
Good point.
We have to stop these Cartel de las Soles. We have to blow them out of the water. The Cartel de las Soles is a existential threat to the United States of America. We're at war with the Cartel de las Soles. Now we arrested Maduro, and the Justice Department goes, oh, there is no Cartel de las Soles. We just made it up. It doesn't exist. Well, it actually did. It was created in 1989 by the CIA, who bribed a Venezuelan general to transport 22 tons of cocaine to the United States on behalf of the United States government. We know that. Again, everything about this stinks. Everything about this is illegal. And yet everybody's cheering it as if this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's a national humiliation to have Pete Hegseth up there, F around, and you find, hey, Pete, you're about to F around and you're going to find out. I mean, piracy, an act of piracy, yo ho ho and a bottle of rum. Is that what the Coast Guard has become? I mean, this is disturbing times as an American. And I don't know if we can even call ourselves Americans anymore, because the term American attaches itself to the constitutional republic that is our nation. And when we have totally walked away and abrogated the Constitution, we're not Americans. I mean, we may call ourselves the United States of America. The symbol of the flag, though, has no meaning, because that flag is a living symbol of our nation, and our nation is defined by the Constitution. And when we say the Constitution doesn't matter, law doesn't matter, then who are we? What are we? I mean, come on, Americans, look in the mirror. People died in defense of this Constitution. People shed their blood so that you could have the privilege of living in a nation governed by the rule of law, and you're throwing it away because some orange-faced, narcissistic cult of personality has decided that he knows better than anybody. Donald Trump is the dumbest, most corrupt man on the face of the earth. He doesn't know better than anybody. He just happens to be the leader of the most powerful nation on the planet, so he's using this strength to get away with it. But ideas are always more powerful than muscle. And the idea of America, the concept of America, the promise of the rule of law should win out if we just let it. The power of our country isn't in the military might of our armed forces. The power of our country is in the potential we have because we are a nation of laws, the rule of law. And if we just let this system do its job, we're the most powerful nation on the planet, because when we do shine as this beacon of justice, people rally around us. There's a reason why people come to America. There's a reason why, not because of the actual what we are, because we're sort of a cesspool sometimes. We're not perfect. A lot of I just drove across the country and I spent a lot of time um, reviewing the sordid history of the United States and the American Indians. What Kit Carson did to the Navajo, what the
Andrew
General
Jackson and on and on.
Mackenzie.
Yeah.
I went to Muskogee. Near there, there's actually a little Indian town. I went to the Trail of Tears Museum run by the Cherokee Nation, and reviewed that awful history. I went to Palo Duro Canyon, where General Mackenzie slaughtered the Comanche horse herd, forcing the Comanches in 1878, I believe, to finally surrender to the will of the white man. Our history with the American Indians is horrible. Our history with slavery is horrible. Our history of civil rights, we're struggling. I mean, America is not perfect at all, but we have a constitution that sets forth basic principles and then gets amended when necessary to bring rights to people. We're heading in the right direction, but not now. Now we've gone in full reverse. We've allowed whatever foundation of law and justice that had been built over the course of nearly 2.5 centuries to be undermined. The whole edifice is about to collapse. And if you're an American and you're not ashamed by this, you're not an American. Straight up, not an American.
I'd only challenge you on one thing. You said Donald Trump's the dumbest person in America. I'm going with Pete Hegseth. It's close, but it's hard to be dumber than that guy. Hey, America, yeah, we're good. I can't even watch him. I have to turn the news off when I see that guy. My God, what an idiot. Anyway, let's talk about more this. Let's go to Ukraine. I hate to think about these guys. And you know what? Rubio's a different kind of stupid. He's stupid, but he's a different kind of stupid. People ask him questions and he has this bland kind of, yeah, we're gonna take, and you just look at him and you're like, he's where Hegseth is an overt stupid. Rubio is just kind of an evil, vacant, vacuous stupid that he says things, but there's no substance behind it. I can't talk about these guys anymore. I'll hang myself. Let's talk about something else for a minute, Scott. It just drives me crazy. The Coalition of the Willing. They've said, Scott, even though amongst each other, they couldn't muster 2,000 troops each between France and the British. Even though they admitted to Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, they couldn't send anybody under any circumstances because their government would immediate collapse. Now they're saying, oh, we're going to send 15,000 troops that we don't have to Ukraine. As soon as this thing is over, we'll get them in there. And here's my interpretation. They know that the one thing the Russians will never, ever, ever agree to is that. So they're simply saying that so that they can thwart any possibility, which doesn't even exist anymore, of some kind of an agreement, because the Russians have to win, and the Russians are winning, and the Russians will win. Scott.
Yeah. What's interesting is this Coalition of the Willing. Did you see who else was there, though, for the United States?
No.
Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. All right. And why I bring that up is, first of all, who the hell are they? They're not diplomats. They're not experts on Russia. They're some of the, I hate to say this about Witkoff, but he's exposing himself to be just another corrupt real estate developer. Jared Kushner, we know, is a man who has no soul because of what he's doing in Gaza. And these are the, two people that met with Vladimir Putin, thanks to Kirill Dmitriev, Vladimir Putin's designated point of contact for the economic aspects of post-conflict resolution between the United States and Russia. Why is it important that these two men were at Ukraine? Because of what, or at the Coalition of the Willing meeting? I think it was in Paris. Why? Because of what you just said. Because the Coalition of the Willing is not looking for an end to this conflict. They're looking to ensure this conflict never ends. Why is this important for Witkoff and Jared Kushner, because they have no intention of ever following through on any of the commitments they're making about post-conflict economic cooperation. That will never happen. It's a facade. It's a charade. It's been exposed as such. But you see, they will continue to promote the concept of the spirit of Anchorage, the spirit of Alaska. I mean, this is what you hear over and over again from the Russians. The Russians are making a fatal error. I'm not saying that Kirill Dmitriev went into this with, ill intent. Maybe they believed that Donald Trump was different, that Donald Trump could behave different. Hell, I did for a moment. I think you did as well. We were operating on the hope that this guy would move us in a direction towards peace, that he was generally committed towards peace. We now know with absolute certainty that he is not. How do we know? Because Donald Trump was complicit with the Ukrainians in the attempt to kill Vladimir Putin in December. The drone attack. There can be no doubt that the phone conversation that Trump had with Putin and the request for Putin to remain in place while he conferred to call him back, during which time the drones attacked, that there's a linkage to that. The Russians know this. Why? The Russians collected debris from the drones. The United States was saying, no, they weren't trying to hit the residence someplace close. And the Russians provided a chip to the United States. And on that chip are the specific coordinates of the president's residence. Not only that, but the methodology used to guide the drone there, the data inputted is inputted in a way. This is all done by Palantir, by the way, a nice name, working with the Germans to create deniability. But Palantir, they use open source data, but then they also say they use data provided by the Ukrainian government. That data is data provided by the U.S. community to the Ukrainian government. The way this data is put together, assembled, the quality of the data, the timing associated with the collection of the data, all points to the United States collecting this information, processing this information, packaging it so they could load it on this chip. This was American intelligence used to attack the president of Russia, and the Russians know this, and they gave that chip to American defense attachés without a word. But what they were saying is, we know everything. Look at this chip. We know everything, which means they know that the president of the United States tried to attack Vladimir Putin. Now, it was trying to kill Vladimir Putin or just send a signal. It doesn't matter. The point is he's trying to undermine the authority of Vladimir Putin, because what he's doing is having a conversation with Vladimir Putin about the potential of peace, and then he's making Vladimir Putin look weak. And then he blames everything on Vladimir Putin. I'm unhappy with Putin. We could be moving forward with Witkoff and Kushner. We could have these great things, but Vladimir Putin is the impediment, so I'm going to put more sanctions on it. And there it is, what this is all about. The United States is using sanctions not only to weaken Russia, but to create a fifth column inside Russia. You see, the second you talk about great Arctic development, it's not just Kirill Dmitriev speaking to Witkoff and Kushner. He then goes back and speaks to the Kremlin, who then starts sending orders out to the Arctic to develop plans. And so you have governors and mayors and business leaders coming together going, man, let's make plans for when the sanctions are lifted, how we're going to get all this oil out of the ground, how we're going to build this city up, how we're going to do this, how we're going to do that. And you generate this hope of a better life across the board. And then when Trump comes out and says, Vladimir Putin, it's his fault. The goal here is to have people inside Russia go, wait a minute, we want to get wealthy. You're telling me it's Vladimir Putin's fault. And now you create that fifth column inside. That's the whole purpose here. The light has finally come on. I thought Trump was different. He's not. I've watched his relationship with the CIA. It's a despicable relationship. The CIA, for a while I was getting angry at John Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA. I said, he's a rogue operator. He should be shot because the president is directing him to, for peace. And I reflected back, though. I was like, but why did Ratcliffe allow the former national intelligence officer of the CIA, of the intelligence community, a CIA analyst, Gerganis, her name is Julia Gerganis. She was the national intelligence officer in 2016 and 2017. She helped write the assessment that said Donald Trump is in cahoots with the Russians. She knows it's a lie. She manufactured the data. She's on record saying she hates Donald Trump and she wants to undermine him. She views him as a Russian agent. So they put her out the pasture for a couple of years, but they brought her back. Who was briefing Donald Trump on Air Force One as he was flying to Alaska? Julia Gerganis. She was briefing him on Putin in Russia and the intent. And she hates Putin. She's a Russophobe. So she was you can't believe that Donald Trump was sitting there getting this information on the way to meet with Vladimir Putin. Because if I were Donald Trump trying to set up a peace deal and I'm being briefed by the CIA about how evil Putin is, I'd be like, guys, I don't want to hear this right now. This isn't. But Trump was being briefed because Alaska was always a setup. Always a setup. Donald Trump wasn't going to Alaska to make a deal. Donald Trump was going to Alaska to set Vladimir Putin up, to set him up with the promise and potential of a better life if sanctions could be lifted, if a peace deal could be had. And it's been a setup the whole time. And now we know that the CIA and Donald Trump are on the same page. The CIA is attacking Russia. They admit it. Again, you've worked with the press before, Garland. How long does it take the New York Times or Washington Post to research and write one of these in-depth national security articles? It takes a long time. There's a lot of collusion that has to go forward. And the timing of the release of these articles is important. Why did the New York Times release an article about the CIA attacking Russia's oil fields on the same day that there was controversy about the Ukrainians trying to attack? And the CIA had to jump in and go, no, they weren't trying to kill. Well, how did you know? How do you know? Because you planned it. It's your operation. And now the president should have fired Radcliffe on the spot, should have ordered the the Directorate of Operations shut down. Instead, he said, I believe my guys, because it's all the same plan. The Russian government has been played like fools. That's okay. They want peace. I mean, they've been naive before. Minsk, they got played in Minsk. But it's happening again. And people need to understand that the United States is not looking for a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. The United States is looking to strategically defeat Russia. We want to bring Russia down. And we're using sanctions as a vehicle to create the potential of better economic life in Russia if only certain conditions are met, but Vladimir Putin is the impediment. And we're trying to create a fifth column to create unrest inside Russia. Hopefully the Russians are onto this. And I've been speaking till I'm blue in the face. So hopefully somebody's listening and paying attention. Guys, I used to do this for a living. I'm pretty good at this kind of stuff. And I'm just saying, I'm pretty confident that I'm 100% correct on this. And there's a Scott, as a patriotic American, why are you doing this? Because as a patriotic American, I believe that my country is best served by having good relations with Russia, that Russia is not our enemy, that we shouldn't be looking to strategically defeat a nuclear armed superpower, because at the end of the day, that can only bring about one thing, the end of the world. I'm a patriot who wants my country to live and survive and thrive in accordance with the rule of law, the Constitution. So I'm opposed to bad policy. I was opposed to the illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq. I'm opposed to the illegal activities taking place in Venezuela. And I'm opposed to illegal regime change operations in Russia. And I believe it's my patriotic duty as an American citizen to speak out in opposition to these policies. Just like Abraham Lincoln, that great American patriot, spoke out against the illegal war against Mexico. You know that Lincoln went on the floor of the Congress and challenged the government of the United States to produce the evidence of exactly the spot where Mexico attacked America. It turned out that American troops were actually inside Mexico, and we attacked the Mexicans. That we're the ones who committed the act of aggression that led to the Mexican-American War. Lies, 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 lies. It's been the patriotic duty of American patriots from the very beginning of this republic to call out the government for the crime of telling lies to the American people. That's what the whole Ellsberg Pentagon Papers case was before the Supreme Court, New York Times versus the United States government. And the justice who found in favor of the New York Times said that freedom of speech isn't something that's controlled by the government. Freedom of speech is a God-given right of the American people. And freedom of speech is best enacted when the people are exposing the lies of the government, especially when those lies can lead to American soldiers dying in foreign lands. Hey, guys, we're getting ready to have a lot of American soldiers die in foreign lands for no just cause, for no just reason. And it's the patriotic duty of every American to call out the lies that are leading us in this direction.
I'm trying to find real quick Tulsi Gabbard, someone that I was like, oh, this is great. Oh, she's wonderful. Oh, she's going to be one who's different, blah, 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 blah. Right. And she has come out with a tweet that is, pissed a lot of people off, where basically, she's just said, after all of this opposing regime change and Trump will know blah, 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 won't do. And she came out and said, Trump said that he was going to protect our borders and protect us from drugs, and he's doing it. Oh, yeah, because starting a war and outrage in Central America, it's not like it's going to drive millions of people to our border. Oh, I'm going to completely destabilize Colombia, Mexico, and Venezuela. What's another 20 million, 40 million people at the border? That won't bother us, right? So, and she says, and protect us from drugs, except they've already admitted that the drugs are a lie, right? And so she's like, and it was a flawless operation. It was an illegal operation. So here's the bottom line. I've got to say, in comes Kash Patel. He's going to stop all of this lawlessness and take the deep state out. And now he's prancing around with his girlfriend / handler. You've got Tulsi coming in, and everybody's like, she's got to resign with her resignation. You look at it, and I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing for those of us who are extremely skeptical to look at it and say, Biden was in here with these lunatics, complete lunatics. Sullivan and Blinken, madmen, sociopaths, psychopaths. Trump comes in with people that are like, we're going to make a difference. We're going to stop this. We're going to stop the same thing. Well, no, not really, because the Biden people didn't really say we're good guys. They were evil from day one. These people come in and give us the song and dance and come in. Tulsi, the whole lot of them, absolute scammers, liars, frauds, right? I think the American people, I would say to people at this point, and now Trump is saying, yes, my enemies are Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, and Rand Paul. Those are your enemies, and you're palling around with a terrorist named Lindsey Graham. So I think the American people, if people said to me, what should you do? I'd say vote for, if they're not a Democrat or a Republican, vote for them. I don't care if they're libertarian, I don't care what party they are. If you vote for a Republican or a Democrat, to me, you got to be out of your mind at this point. These people have lied. Tulsi Gabbard is a disgrace. They're all a disgrace. I'm pissed. As you can tell, I'm furious, man.
Oh, I am too. Look, it's funny. I read comments. I shouldn't. I've been told not to. Many times.
We got a lot of trolls and bots these days, and I'm sure they're paid probably 7,000. They're getting their 7,000 a post.
Better money than you and I are. I can tell you that. But the interesting thing is sometimes people are like, "But Scott, you voted for Donald Trump. You're to blame for this." I just want to remind your audience why I voted for Donald Trump. I voted for Donald Trump because Joe Biden was taking us on a path towards nuclear war with Russia. The CIA briefed the United States Congress in late November, early December of last year, just a year ago, in 2024, that there was greater than 51% chance of a nuclear war with Russia before the year ended. At that briefing, senior members of Congress who were present said that the scariest thing wasn't the CIA's conclusion, but the fact that the Biden administration's senior national security officials in the room said, yes, we're ready for this war, and we believe we're going to win this war. So the moment you have somebody in executive office who believes that they can fight and win a nuclear war, it becomes the most dangerous thing in the world. And therefore, I made it my goal to try and put somebody in the White House who at least articulated in opposition to nuclear war. And because of the pressures that Garland Nixon, myself, and others placed on then candidate Trump, his campaign actually committed in September of 2024 to stopping a war with Russia and avoiding nuclear conflict and promoting arms control. So as far as I was concerned, I voted for Donald Trump, and I will defend that vote forever. But the key thing about democracy isn't that you vote for somebody then walk away. You hold them to account for what they do. And Donald Trump has been a singular disappointment, a singular disappointment. I will modify what you said because I believe Donald Trump has to be stopped at any cost. Well, any cost that is constitutional. The most constitutional thing we can do right now is empower the Democrats in Congress to paralyze the Trump administration, to begin impeachment proceedings that are serious, not manufactured, that deal with real constitutional issues, to put the whole America First movement on trial for the last 2 years of the Trump administration, to prevent him from acting out on these insane lunatic fantasies. And then in 2028, then I buy the Garland corollary. We, the people, can take control very easily. Just don't vote for any Democrats or Republicans. Purge them from the system. It doesn't cost any money. Just go and vote for anybody but that, and just put somebody else on the ballot. Make it the local beauty queen. Make it the homecoming king. I don't care who you elect, because whomever you elect will do a better job than these people. We have to break the grip that political parties have on, George Washington warned us, don't do political parties. It'll destroy democracy. Well, that's where we're at right now, because neither political party believes in the Constitution. The Constitution is an impediment to both parties, and we are a constitutional republic. So this coming election, I encourage everybody to go out and vote Democrat. Please flood it. Get the Democrats in Congress. Get them. I mean, I'd love to see you get a 60% majority in the Senate as well, so they can actually impeach and imprison this orange-faced, narcissistic, Caligula-like cult of personality that sees dictatorial power in the United States. Trump is the single greatest threat to the United States of America today, and he has to be stopped. Thomas Jefferson spoke of, maybe the tree of liberty needs to be washed in the blood of patriots and tyrants every now and then. I'm not promoting that because that's unconstitutional. We have a constitution. We have constitutional remedies. And the biggest constitutional remedy right now is to vote the bastards out. So let's do that. Let's paralyze Trump. I mean, this has to be our singular goal. Guys, there's no more questions about it. They just shot an innocent American citizen to death in Milwaukee?
Yeah, somewhere. I don't know where it was. I saw and I watched it.
Straight up murder. You can't reach into you're a cop. Okay. How do you detain somebody? Don't you have to vocalize the intent of detain? Can you as a cop reach inside a car, and try to move the steering wheel and all that? No, you can't. So you have a cop come up with no legal authority whatsoever, reach inside, try to take control of the car, moves the steering wheel in a way, harasses the girl while she's driving. The other cop pulls out a gun and executes her. The other cop, in order to execute her, had to actually advance in front of the vehicle. Why is he advancing in front of the vehicle? He's not allowed to detain her. It is not a crime for her to move. They can take the license plate down and they can do, but they murdered this woman. They executed this woman in broad daylight. And there's Americans saying this is okay. J.D. Vance says this is okay. It's not okay. America is now an occupied nation, occupied by poorly trained, thuggish ICE enforcers who cover their faces and execute Americans in broad daylight. This is what we've become, America. This is not right. and we have to stop it. So constitutionally, I would encourage everybody to vote Democrat in the coming midterm election, just to paralyze this orange-faced son of a bitch, to end the ability of his ridiculous tenure as president to continue to do harm on the American people and the world. And then in 2028, vote them all out, every single one of them. Do not vote Democrat. Do not vote Republican. And don't vote for independents who change. Anybody who has a D and an R next to their name right now doesn't get to go around and say, I'm an I. No, bring in totally new people. It can't be worse than what it is. It can't be worse than what it is. And it maybe we can preserve ourselves. It's pie in the sky thinking, but I am so fed up with everybody. The Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans. It's just in this case, by giving the Democrats control of the Congress, they might be able to put some checks and balances on an out of control executive. But at the end of the day, you can't trust either party to hold executive power, especially now that Congress has abrogated so many of its responsibilities. We've basically created a constitutional dictator, and this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is wrong.
People forget it was Joe Biden who put a $25 million bounty on Maduro in the first place. The one, and said he wouldn't recognize his sovereign immunity. Everything that we see here, it was Barack Obama who changed the Smith-Munson Act so that the CIA, people seem to forget that what we're looking at is a two-party system that they play the games of opposition, you know what I mean? But really, and as you say, here's what I believe. This idea that you're going to vote Obama in and you're going to get hope and change, here's what you get. You get hope and change. That's a nice little thing that sounds good. You get I'm with her. Sounds great. Oh, how about this? Big, beautiful bill. MAGA. Build back better. I don't know why they like B's. Build back better. Big, beautiful bill. You know what I mean? All you're going to get is slogans. But in the end, you're not part of the decision-making process, and they don't give a crap about you. And it is up to the people. A nation of sheep begets a government of wolves. It is up to us. If we continue to comply, to go along with whatever they want, and then say, well, the Democrats are out, the Republicans will save us. The Republicans are out, the Democrats will save us. And every 4 years, we have got to determine that we just aren't going to go along with this stuff. And when it gets to this point and there's no hope, there's no hope in them. There's only hope in us. That's my position. And let me ask you this. I mean, and I think this is perfect too. Well, the last thing we'll say, we got 10 minutes or so left. The Europeans, you got Jacques Beau. What are they going to say about Trump? What are they going to say about him? They kidnapped Jacques Beau. They basically kidnapped the other woman named Yen. They're basically, did they physically kidnap him? Okay, maybe not. But they materially kidnapped him. And he can't travel anywhere. He can't go home. His neighbors bring him food. And technically, his neighbors could be charged with violating law. So they're saying to this man, you're in prison, you're starving, and we don't really have any charges against you, so we won't put you in a court of law. We'll just say it's a corrective action. Therefore, we won't give you a venue to seek redress. So, and the BBC, well, we don't want to use the word kidnapped. Let's just go with seized or something like that. So when you look at the Europeans, you know what? They're going to take Greenland. As much as I think that's criminal and everything else, take the hell out of Greenland. Take it. I could care less about these people. You know what I mean? I mean, they're going to gripe about taking Greenland as if they're not in every criminal act. Look what they're doing in their own countries, Scott.
Sometimes there's a silver lining in the darkest of clouds. Again, I'm against Donald Trump's unilateral exercise of American military power in contravention of the rule of law. And let's be very clear. If the United States made a move on Greenland militarily or otherwise exerting the threat of force,
which they will,
which they are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a violation of the United Nations Charter and therefore a violation of the United States Constitution. But of all the things, what's that old saying? I think the Lenin said it: give the capitalists enough rope and they'll hang themselves. One of the most evil institutions on the planet today is NATO. It is truly a dysfunctional institution that seeks only conflict. If by invading Greenland, we sow the seeds that leads to the destruction of NATO, then some good will come out of evil. And so, yes, I fully encourage Donald Trump to illegally annex Greenland. Do it as soon as possible, because then that's the end of NATO. And I will be very happy. I said when Mark Rutte became the Secretary General that he will be the last Secretary General of NATO, because NATO cannot survive. It's a dysfunctional. And we see it right now. NATO is at war with itself, and it's beautiful. I love to see it, because it just proves the fact that NATO was never really a viable organization. It only existed to do the bidding of the United States. And now that the United States seeks to bid differently, NATO is incompatible with our goals and our objectives. Jacques Bode, this is a fascinating case, because the genesis of this is a EU regulation that was passed, I believe, at the end of 2019 because of COVID. They were worried about disinformation from COVID, and so they were worried about how information was being used, abused, hybrid conflicts, and all this stuff. But it's fascinating because in 2019 they passed this regulation, but they said we haven't figured out how to enforce this. We'll work on that. In 2022, the EU's foreign relations branch, together with their cybersecurity people, came up with a study, and they came up with this concept called FIMI, F-I-M-I, which is foreign information manipulation, and I don't know what the other I is. But they listed, because this is the language that's used in Jacques Bode's indictment. They accused him of foreign information manipulation. So I said, okay, curious. Let's see what it's all about. Well, they come down to it. They say, this isn't about the truthfulness of the words. It's about the process in which the information is being portrayed. Basically, if the process falls outside of the processes controlled by government, it's now manipulated information. You can be telling the truth and be found guilty under FIMI, which is exactly what happened to Jacques Bode. You look at the single instance they raise. For instance, Colonel Bode says, I think it's Bo. I think the D is
right. Bo, yeah.
I'm American, so I can say it anyway.
I say Bode. I'm American. I'd say Bode. I even pronounce the D. I don't know.
Hey, no offense, Jacques. We love you, baby, but you're dealing with two Americans, and we mispronounce everything, even our own words. It's true. In American English, we can say anything we want. If the majority of Americans, it becomes acceptable usage, Webster's will put it in the dictionary. Yeah. We get to literally make our own language as we go along, based on ignorance, not on intelligence. But I apologize. It's Jacques Bode. They accused him of promoting the concept that Ukraine started the war with Russia in order to join NATO. And I said, okay, well, let's find out if this is true. And I went through Jacques Bode's books, and sure enough, he wrote a book, Russia and Ukraine, The Last War, or something like that. And there's a passage in there where he lists in great detail, factually, how he made, but it's not Jacques Bode making these claims. He simply repeats the Russian art of war. I think that's it. And he just uses Zelensky's own statements and Arestovich's own statements, and he lays them out in the conclusions, and that's what it is. He told the truth. He told it in a way that got the Ukrainians upset and got the European promoters of Ukraine upset, because it was truth told outside the processes controlled by the European Union. Amanda Sloat, who was the director of European affairs for the National Security Council of the Biden administration and was one of the people making policy at that time in 2022 when the special military operation began. She got pranked by Vovan and Lexus, those two Ukrainian Russian pranksters. And she believed she was talking to an advisor of the Ukrainian president. And she said, yeah, Ukraine wanted to join NATO, and they were pushing for this conflict. And we could have stopped it if we wanted to, but we thought, okay, who are we to stop the Ukrainians trying to join NATO? So we let the war go on. But looking back, maybe we shouldn't have done it. We would have saved a lot of lives if we just told the Ukrainians no. Everything Jacques Beau said was true, factually true. And the European Union sanctioned him for telling the inconvenient truth. That's this. So I just wrote an article for my good friend Peter Hensler. He runs a forum. You met Peter.
Yeah, great guy.
And they do geopolitical. I'm sorry, Peter. I'm horrible. Either Forum Geopolitica or Geopolitical Forum. But it's a great outlet for geopolitical analysis. And I've been writing for them recently. And so I just wrote a piece, and the title of it in French is "Sanction Me, Bitch." And I'm basically telling Kelly, sanction me. Because you see, I'm American. I'm not Swiss. My government's not going to fold. Read the national security strategy of the United States and listen to the statements of American people like J.D. Vance, the president, Marco Rubio, and others. If the European Union dares sanction an American citizen for exercising free speech, the United States will come down on you like the wrath of God. And, on this one, I'm supportive. Sometimes strength is good. Strength exercised in pursuit of a just cause is good. And defending free speech is always good, especially free speech attached to institutions that call themselves Democrats. There it is, Forum Geopolitica. Pascal Kohler, who's called out in this, is a Swiss army officer who simply repeats the lies of Calais Calas. And he does it inaccurately, and he does it in a manner which is, it slanders Jacques Beau. So I think Peter Hensler, who wrote this article, is calling for Pascal to be criminally prosecuted for slander and libel, and he should be. But there's we are. Jacques Beau he's Swiss. He's in Belgium. It's far away from our shores, but it is a battle for the defense of free speech that every American needs to become involved in. If we let the European Union do this, then they are truly becoming the enemies of the United States of America, because we are a constitutional republic founded on a constitution, one of the foundational elements of which is freedom of speech. And we cannot be allied with nations that don't share these common values. And right now, you literally have the European Union criminalizing the telling of truth. Now, the Biden administration did that. RFK Jr. was prosecuted twice under the Biden administration. And there was two interesting legal terms that came out of this: misinformation and malinformation.
Yep.
Misinformation, it turns out, isn't a lie. Misinformation is just the truth told in a way that's inconvenient for the U.S. government. That's against the narrative of the U.S. government. That's misinformation, because the only real information is the narrative put up by the U.S. government. It doesn't matter that it's all lies. It's misinformation if you tell the truth that contradicts the narrative put out. Malinformation, mal meaning bad. This information is truth that's inconvenient to the U.S. government. It's not that it's bad information. It's just that you're telling a narrative that's inconvenient to the U.S. government. So that's malinformation. And both of those became cognizable prosecutorial, elements of crime. Telling the truth under the Biden administration had become a crime in America. And it is now a crime in the European Union. Jacques Beau told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And he's now sanctioned by the European Union. They are truly the enemies of the American way of life, and they should be treated as such.
I'll just say this for everyone out there: when Scott was one, I was one, a lot of us were focusing or constantly supporting Julian Assange. We all tried to tell you. We all tried to tell you when they went after Assange for telling the truth that was the the camel's nose under the tent. Scott Ritter. Oh, by the way, before we go, let me show you the most important website you could ever find. And that website is none other than ScottRitter.com. Hey, Scott, before we go, people all need to go to your website. Tell everybody what they'll find on your website and why they need to check it out.
Well, ScottRitter.com will take you to my Substack. And as you see across the Substack, there's different headings for different categories of information that I package. Some are articles, some are videos. A lot of them are interviews. The Russia House is one of my, one of the key things on there. Right at the top is an interview I just did with Sergei Karaganov, one of the preeminent political scientists of Russia. Down there are also interviews that were done when Garland and I were in Moscow. Fascinating interviews. And if you listen to these interviews, you get an insight. I'll just tell a little war story about this. In preparing to go to Russia, my producer, Alexandra Madornaya, had lined up all of these interviews that we were going to do. And she was approached by the presidential administration who said, who's behind these interviews? And she said, well, Scott Ritter is, and I'm helping facilitate. But who's directing Scott Ritter to do this? No, he just wants to have an insight. You see, the problem wasn't any individual Russian that we were talking to. They were all people who've given interviews before. The problem was that we had assembled in the totality of the interviews we were doing, people that were capable of providing deep insight into Russia. And that became a counterintelligence problem. People in the presidential administration saying, yeah, but when you look at all of this information together, you're getting a comprehensive look at the reality of Russia. And Alexander said, but that's sort of what Scott's always been about, trying to grasp the reality of Russia and bring it back to an American audience. I think they were finally convinced that this was my initiative, and they sort of monitored it. But I think there was concern on some people that I was actually a front of the CIA or some American intelligence going in and trying to find the indirect approach to gain insight into Russia, which is a valid concern given the fact that you have people like Doctorow, out there trying to promote a fifth column, the concept of the idea of a fifth column, and now you have Witkoff and Jared Kushner actively working with the CIA to create a fifth column. And what can empower a fifth column more than deep insight into the Russian reality? Look, the Russia House is a serious endeavor. The interviews we do there are essential for Americans to understand the reality of Russia today, and we need to understand that because that's the only way we defeat Russophobia. And until we defeat Russophobia, there is no hope for a change in policy. Trump will not change policy. Trump is seeking the strategic defeat of Russia. So the Russia House is one of the projects I'm very proud of. I've also I'm doing an experiment in online publishing. The Scud Hunters is a book that I've written, and so far I've published a prologue in 3 chapters. I got the 4th chapter just about done, and I've got the rest already done. This is a book about the Gulf War and about the first 3 years of weapons inspections, basically the problem of Iraqi Scuds and how did we finally come to grips with the Scud issue. I think it's a fascinating book, and I decided to try and publish it online for people. So there it is. And then I just do standard articles and interviews. I have Ritter's Rant, which is my YouTube channel. 5 to 10 minutes of whatever the hell crosses my mind at any given time. And then, look, it's just a lot of work. Ask the Inspector is my weekly podcast. It's all there. There's no paywall. You can go to this website and access everything. However, Substack is the principal form of income for me. I receive my income from the people who voluntarily opt to subscribe to this. And I will say that, your subscriptions make all of this possible. Garland Nixon and I went to Russia in November. I was only able to do that because of the financial support provided through these subscriptions. Yes, I raised money in every article that's on here. you have the ability to donate. All donations go to underwriting the expenses of the work I do. But going to Russia, I had about a $7,500, $8,000 shortfall. I was able to make up that shortfall because of the income that I received through my Substack. So for all the people out there who do, buy a paid subscription, thank you. It helps me keep the roof over my family, put food on the table, and if necessary, it helps underwrite the work I'm doing. So thanks for putting up the website, Garland, and I hope as many people as possible will go to it, empower themselves with knowledge and information, and if you're able to, do a donation or a subscription.
All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thank you for all my Patreon people and everybody who does buy me a coffee and all that stuff. And of course, I have a PO box for people who do snail mail. People send me all kind of letters, their manifestos. Some interesting. I actually get like some people's manifestos. It's kind of fun. But people send me all kinds of stuff. Somebody sent me ties. Somebody sent me this tie. So at any rate, thanks a lot, everybody. And the most important thing that you guys can do, go to Scott's stuff. Support Scott, help him with his good works. And of course, share this on all your social media platforms. As you know, on social media, on these types of platforms, we don't have Walmart and Lockheed Martin and all of that. The only thing we have to get these messages out is you. Like, subscribe, share this everywhere you can. We're out. All right. Thanks a lot.